Financial stress doesn't usually start with numbers. It starts with a feeling. I should be on top of this, but I'm not. The fear of getting it wrong, the overwhelm creeps in, and then doing nothing at all, because sometimes it just feels too risky. If that sounds familiar, today's episode's for you. Welcome to the Evalesco Healthy, Wealthy and Happy podcast. I'm your host, Belinda Wallace, and I'm joined by our CEO.
Hey, Belinda.
This podcast exists because we see it every day. Capable, intelligent people doing their best yet still feeling stressed and unsure where it comes from and how to fix it.
That's right. I mean, at the moment, financial stress in Australia is at the highest level in over a decade. 21% of people over the age of 15 report some level of financial stress, and 35% of adults say it's difficult or very difficult to get by. And I think one of the key things that we're finding is that's not just a low-income problem.
No.
That's across the population more broadly. So it's a real issue and something that we are highly motivated to help people work through those challenges to become clearer and more confident in their own lives to live that healthy, wealthy and happy life that they all deserve.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think those stats are actually quite scary, especially as we see the next generations coming through and the wealth passing through those generations. It's becoming more and more challenging for them to deal with that.
Totally.
Yeah. So by the end of this episode, you'll understand why money stress is so common and hopefully walk away with a bit of a blueprint for moving forward with some clarity and confidence. So this isn't new, as you said. We've been having these conversations with our clients for years. Why do you think it's become so apparent now?
Yeah, good question. I think when I first started in the industry, and you're not that far behind me, it was probably the challenge and the reason people felt a lack of confidence in their finances was it was hard to find information and hard to know what the right strategies were to do. I think it's flipped 100% now. There's so much information out there that people feel overwhelmed about, what's the right thing to do and how do they apply that filter and work through it in their own circumstances. And that I think that's the case in a lot of our areas of our life, particularly when it comes to finance, because it's not something that people learn at school necessarily. Should be. So it's, you're kind of left to work it out yourself unless you come and talk to an advisor or somebody who can help you. And a reason that some people don't want to do that is because they feel like they feel silly, effectively.
Yeah,
they feel like they should be doing better. And they don't want to embarrass themselves by sort of, unearthing what they don't know or where they're actually at. So I think that's why it's continuing to get worse, as well as, the well-publicised cost of living crunch. Everything's getting more expensive, and that's affecting people more broadly as well.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of that fatigue, and that decision fatigue as well creeps in. It's like, how many decisions do we need to make? And it's not just finance, then it's broader life, and it all compiles then too as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then I guess that leads into my next question is, when people first come into us and see the team, one of the team, what are we seeing from an emotional perspective with these clients?
Yeah, I think when they first come in, that there's some fear, there's anxiety around, where they're at. I think, there's often a lot of comparison. They think they should be doing better. They see other people doing things that they want to do and they don't know why they're not doing that. So what we try to do, though, is to help people relax a little bit and have a broader conversation, remove the focus on the numbers on day one, talk a little bit more about, what's important to you, who's important, and what is it specifically that's keeping you awake at night? What are you trying to achieve? And, focusing on that healthy, wealthy and happy goal. And that usually helps people to relax a little bit and removes that initial fear so that we can have a broader conversation and start working on a plan for them.
I think that then, as you said, it removes the fear, it opens up and creates the space for some more clarity as well. Starts to ease into that clarity piece where they can see the path ahead because they're not stuck. Yeah, good. So I guess we could go to painting a bit of a picture. We've got clients, they earn good incomes, money feels reactive. It comes in, it goes out, prospective clients especially. That's typically why they come to us for our help. Bills come in, something unexpected comes up, a health event, something to do with the house or a property or whatever it might be, and they're instantly back in catch-up mode or feel like they're back in catch-up mode. And that's not always necessarily the case, but that's the feeling that they're there sitting there with. Or ignoring emails, not wanting to log into internet banking if it gets really bad. There's all those barriers to help them then move forward and get some clarity. I think the key with that is we need to make sure that people know that it's not a failure, and that's really key too, and that's where that emotional piece and creating some clarity really comes into play.
Yeah, I had a discussion with a prospective new client yesterday on that, and she, contacted us because she said, "I just feel like I should be doing better. I've got a good income. I've been working for a long time,
Yep.
but I just feel like I'm, living day to day." And so, but when I sat down and talked to her and said, "Well, tell me about where you're at the moment. Tell me what you're trying to achieve and what's triggered it," she's actually in a really good position.
Yeah.
And so it's just from her perspective, having that little bit of objectivity, stepping away from it a little bit and kind of going, okay, sure, there's some things you could be doing better, but you've actually done really well to get where you are now.
Yeah.
Things will be okay. And so, that was a 15-minute conversation. We're going to catch up and dive deeper.
Yeah, good.
But just at the end of that conversation, I guess laying it all out on the table and taking it off your own chest can be a big difference, and acknowledging that's okay as a starting point.
Good. I guess it's that assurance piece, and that's where we certainly can hold their hand and provide that support to them. I guess then we can move into, our blueprint, our healthy, wealthy and happy blueprint. It's a simple framework. We see it as simple. And as clients then come in and work through this, it does open up and appear really simple. But I think without guidance, it's hard to then step into that space. So
reminds me of that saying, it's simple rather than easy. If it was all easy, then we would all be billionaires with great six packs. That's not the case because it is hard.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've kind of touched on this. I guess step one is on the emotional side, and it's about acknowledging those emotions. So before we move to strategies and structures and financial advice as such, we need to acknowledge how people feel and to help them through that fear, that uncertainty, the potential guilt. Decisions can't be made if they're emotionally overwhelmed.
Yeah, and if you just talk about the numbers, that doesn't resonate either. All of us make decisions based on emotion and based on how we feel about things at the time. So acknowledging that, understanding what those emotions are, is a really good place to start. I think that's not what people would often think when they think they're going to talk to a financial advisor.
Yeah.
So that's important. That part of the reason we're doing this podcast is to sort of make people feel comfortable or, I guess, expectant that that's what we're going to be talking about in the early stages. You don't want to come in thinking you're just going to be talking about your super balance, and all of a sudden we're asking you these questions about how you feel.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think then we've got that out in the open. We can then move into the clarity space and creating that clarity for them, which is obviously really important. The clarity around what actually matters. It's not just numbers. It's about their life, and that's ultimately what they're living. The numbers help build that life and guide that life, but it can't be just the numbers. So it's that life priorities.
Yeah. And I think it's also, as I was talking about with that example of the prospective client yesterday, it's providing a bit of context. You understand first, context in your own life, who else is important, what else is important, and where your financial position fits into your goals and what you're trying to achieve. But then providing the context of, that clarity of your current financial position within the context of the broader population. You're probably doing okay and maybe better than you think. So helping to sort of lay that out and be really clear on that and where you are. And if you're not doing that well, better to know that. It's better to have that information, be working from real, position of real knowledge and knowing exactly where you're starting from.
Yeah, great. So I guess to that point, the data piece is we can't base a plan on assumptions. So we do need detail for clients as they come in to properly make decisions for them or help them make decisions to then provide the advice based on those. And I think that's really key, is that the data, we certainly need that. And we've got a office full of team full of numbers people, so they love it. But I think that's really important as well. Then once we've got the clarity, we can then help them build the control as step 3 in the blueprint. So we can help them control through structure, through strategy, absolutely, but also through support, holding their hand along the way. I know there's future episodes we've got coming up around life transitions and that sort of thing. So there's different points in time where we might provide more support or less support, but the support is key. And that, I've found, creates calm. Clients come in for their review meetings or whatever, and they're at ease. Even if they're not where they want to be financially, they know that they've got that support there, which is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on a couple of really key points there. So it always starts with strategy. So, getting the strategy right up front, which is going to maximize the probability that you're on the right pathway to achieve your important goals. And then having the structure around that. And I'm a big believer that discipline equals freedom. So if you have that structure and that discipline, it gives you the freedom then to go and focus on the things that are important and things that you find enjoyable, your healthy, wealthy and happy life, as opposed to having to make constant decisions around what you're doing with your financial plan or how you're managing it. So I guess that structure removes some of the decision fatigue that you touched on earlier and allows people to, their plan ticks along in the background with our support, with our monitoring. It's good to check in on that regularly, but you don't have to be doing things on a day-to-day basis other than the things that you want to do.
And I think that's certainly where we see that we add a lot of value to the relationship, is that peace of mind and that support and the calm, them knowing that it's just happening. So it's just moving forward.
Yep.
Yeah, good. And then I guess that leads to enabling them to grow confidently in other areas of their life, but also financially, which is really key. It might not be perfect all the time, but there's still growth, there's still progress. Regularly checking in on that is what's...
Yeah, as humans, we're hardwired to value progress. So, often as long as you feel like you're moving forward and moving towards a goal, then that's enough to help you keep going. And it's always, we talk, you and I specifically, about progress over perfection.
Yeah.
So there's never a perfect plan. There are always options about which way you can go, but it's about choosing the one that suits your time frame, your comfort level and your budget, and making progress towards those goals. And then checking in, and, life gets in the way and you've got to reset the plan.
Yep.
But if you keep focus on what's important and the plan helps you move towards that, then that builds the confidence that, okay, we've made some good decisions, we're taking some positive actions, we're moving in the right direction, which you can just see people's shoulders drop.
Absolutely.
Feel like we're in good shape now, even if, they're only making small changes to what they're doing.
Yeah.
That helps a lot.
Sometimes the small incremental changes have the bigger impact anyway. It's not always about leaping into the next one. It's the little steps along the way. It's all about the path.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess then moving, I guess the blueprint then, step 1, if we recap, acknowledging the emotions of clients. We can't look past that. We have to acknowledge them and help them through those. We then move to creating clarity through the strategy, the plan, the structure, the support.
Yep, clear understanding of where you are and where you want to get to.
Yep. Building control, so creating that calm space for them through that control, and then growing their confidence along the way. Yeah, great.
Sounds simple, doesn't it?
It sure does. It sure does. So if you're listening and thinking, this absolutely makes sense, but I'm still feeling overwhelmed, I still don't feel like I'm there, it's actually okay. It's absolutely okay. And it's very normal. We see it all the time. And it's certainly feedback that all the advisors give is when we're talking through examples and stories and helping them grow in their careers, it's reflecting is that overwhelm and that stuck feeling is very normal. I guess what can people do initially to lean into that a little bit and take steps towards the blueprint?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's about, as we touched on, small steps can make a big difference. So don't try to solve the whole thing all at once. Take some notes or just sit down and think about what are some of the key questions that you have or key things that you're not clear on in your life. Is that you're not clear on where you want to get to, or is that you're not clear on what your current position is? They're kind of the two areas to think about. And what within that would you like some more understanding of? and how can you go about getting that.
Mm.
So I think that's a really great place to start. There are a lot of great resources out there which can help, but it can also overwhelm. So try to look at, what's one thing you might want to learn in the short term, and find one of our podcast episodes on that topic. We have lots of podcasts, and there are lots more coming out over the next few months that might be able to help you to zero in on a specific topic. Or there's some other good resources out there as well. So that's another place to start. Or if you'd like to talk to somebody, as I said, speaking to the client, the prospective client I spoke with yesterday, now she had been actually listening to our podcasts and following our newsletter for many years before she was in a position where she felt like she was ready to ask some questions. But that's the next step, is to then, get in touch, have a chat with somebody, and, they can help you with work out what are the next steps from there.
And I think that's key to that example, is whilst she took a couple of years to come through to us, or many years to come through to us, there's no right or wrong time for that. So we are always here for a chat, and we will absolutely want to work with people that want the help. But if they're not in a position to, we'll tell them and be very upfront and honest to help them work through that emotion of, am I in the right spot or not? And maybe some tips on what else they could do to be in a position to come back and work with us.
Yeah. And we acknowledge that making that phone call to actually talk to somebody is a big step, right? So, that's not the easiest thing to do. So it makes sense that you access some other resources, look at, whether you feel comfortable with how we position things and discuss things. And hopefully, conversations like today will help you build some confidence in an area and know what sort of questions you need to ask yourself, and then what you can ask us as well.
Yeah, great. Wonderful. Okay. Well, if today's episode resonated with you, absolutely, as Jeff mentioned, jump onto the website evalesco.com.au and check out our resources and our podcast library. As you mentioned, there'll be more episodes coming over the coming months. But thanks for listening, and thanks for joining me, Jeff.
Thanks, BMW. It was a great chat.
And we hope you have a healthy, wealthy, and happy day.